Hello and welcome back to Mars. I'm Mick. We're playing Stationeers. Now today we're going to have a look at what is probably the most powerful part of the phase change update, but unfortunately probably the part of it that is most likely to brain your damage. So this time of course we're looking at latent heat. Now what is latent heat? Well, latent heat is the energy that's released or consumed when a gas turns into a liquid or vice versa. Now, as it is, for a gas to exist as a gas or as a molecule to exist as a gas requires more energy than it does to require as a liquid. So when it changes from a gas to a liquid, it will have to release that energy, and that energy is released in the form of heat. We can actually use that process for heating things up. And of course, when it moves from a liquid back to a gas, it will consume that heat or absorb that heat. So that will allow us to create rudimentary air conditioners and some incredibly powerful air conditioners, but it is a scalable effect. So let's just have a look at what we've got. Now we have in our tank here, we have pollutant. I just chosen pollutant because that's an easy gas for it to work with. Now it's at 2.06 megapascals, 20 degrees Celsius. So if we look at our graph here, we find that between minus 100 degrees and positive 150 degrees, it's got a range there where it will liquefy given enough pressure. I've got 2 megapascals there, so at 20 degrees, we need 3.5 megapascals to actually liquefy it, so it is quite happy to exist as a gas at the moment. So it is doing that, as we can see there. It's just a gas. There is no liquid. There is no condensation symbols happening. It is just a gas. However, if we compress it, so I've got a little volume pump here. You can see that is set at 20 degrees. This pipe here is empty. I have a little volume pump there, so we shall compress into there. That is not enough. See, once we hit, what do we say, 3.6 megapascals, there it goes. It starts to liquefy. Up. Oh, that's unhappy about that. We see now the temperature is rising. That is due to the heat released from the liquid that's coming out of there. But we can see that if we increase the volume of that again, it is now starting to evaporate. There's not enough pressure in there to liquefy it anymore, so it is now evaporating. And once it all evaporates, it should return back to 20 degrees because it still has the same amount of energy. Although that is not insulated, so I may actually lose a little bit. Let's see how we go. Almost. And, well, it's near enough. So we're back to 20 degrees. So it is still gas at 20 degrees. That heat that was released as it turned from gas into a liquid has now been reabsorbed as it turns back into a gas. There you go. It's all used. It's back to 20 degrees. Let's get rid of you again. And we shall take that back off. And our pressure does go back up again. Once again, it is angry. Now, but we now have gas that is hotter than that, the input, but it is now separated into liquid. Now, the liquid contains less energy because it takes less energy to exist as a liquid than it does as a gas. So I can now separate out that liquid with a condensation valve. Boop. It's not going to explode. We're good. And as it comes into this pipe, there is a base in there for it to evaporate again. And we find that we now have... it's all going to evaporate. Oh, awesome. Right. So that is now evaporated to fill the empty space in here. And it is now minus 30 degrees. So we've gone from 20 degrees to 49 and 31. Now, if I join these two back together again, they should go back to 20 degrees because we've not actually lost any energy. we've just separated it out. So the energy that has been lost, or the energy that's been given up by the liquid, is now sitting over here in amongst the pollutant gas that's sitting over here. And the liquid has all evaporated. So it's now returned back to gas, but as it came over here as a liquid that had less energy, as it returns back to a gas, it now comes in at a lower temperature. So we've gone from 20 degrees, we've separated that out into 49 degrees and a minus 31.3. So we've probably got a lot less in here, 33 mole and 58 mole. Right, so there you go, that's where it's all gone. But the more we put into there, that's because that's all evaporated, but that's essentially how we do it. Now, of course, the more we put in here, we will eventually get it to liquefy on this side and stay liquefied. We'll see how we go. Of course, once this gets up to the 2 or 3 megapascals or whatever it takes there to liquefy it at that, depending on that temperature, that's when it will settle down. That should do us. Right, now, okay, we're up to 104 degrees now. Because as we've been liquefying more and more and more, well, more of the gas has been liquefying, it's been releasing more and more heat in there, and the heat still is remaining within the gas that's left. What we've got on the other side is, well, some of it still is a liquid form there. If I now allow that all to evaporate, of course, it'll all cool down once again. So we have that there. It is trapped by the vapor pressure that is in the pipe, and it's going to stay at that temperature. Now it's reached a state of equilibrium. So that is what we have done just passively. Well, of course, it's now hotter than our input side of it, but we now have a lot more of it there. So to cool that down further, I now need to relieve the gas pressure here. It's reached a state of equilibrium. So now the further evaporation is prevented by the gas pressure that we've got here, the vapor pressure. So if we go to 37.8 degrees, we should find on our graph that that is 3.88 megapascals. So, all right, 3.88 megapascals, they're about 37 degrees approximately. So it has reached its state of equilibrium. Right, that's about where it's going to stay. Now we can remove that gas and force further evaporation with the use of a purge valve. There's one I've got here. Boop. Now that one will allow us to reduce the pressure in there to a certain value. So 50 kilopascals, that's pretty much well below what we're asking for there. So if we say go down to 3 megapascals, but currently 3.8. Right, so if we say go down to 3.4, I shall shut that off. Maybe I should return that back to the tank. That might be a better plan. I might just shortcut those two to return it back to the tank. Might be the best way to do it so I don't burst my pipes when I blow it back in. Right, that'll do us. Right, so we're just working here. We now have liquid at 37.8 degrees. I say it has reached a state of equilibrium where the 3.88 megapascals is preventing further evaporation. If I remove that 3.88 megapascals, further evaporation can happen and the temperature should start dropping. So we're saying go down to 3.4 megapascals, which it will try and do. And we see the temperature is now dropping. It's down to 3.4 megapascals. We still have evaporation happening here, so it hasn't quite reached a state of equilibrium as yet. Once it does, the evaporation will stop, the temperature will stop changing, and we shall reach the new state of equilibrium at 3.4 megapascals, which should be 3.4 megapascals is, if I get it round about there, so it should go to round about 11 degrees. and it's slowing down now. So once it gets to 11 degrees, it should reach its new state of equilibrium. It's slowing down a lot now. Okay, well, 11 degrees wasn't far off. Right, that one will stop evaporating and reach a state of equilibrium there. So by using our graph and using our pressure regulator there, we can decide what temperature we want out of that there. So if we want to go down to minus 28 degrees, we should be putting in 2.8 kilopascals. So, wrong way. If I go down to 2.8 kilopascals, that should go down to minus 20 degrees if we don't run out of liquid first, and we're probably going to run out of liquid first. Yeah.
Air tank low.
Awesome. Okay. Well, we're probably going to run out of liquid. But anyway, so by playing with our pressures in there, we can actually adjust our temperatures. So we're now well below the temperature we started at. So we have essentially cooled the gas and none of the energy has gone. We've just moved the energy from this side to make this side cooler, this side warmer, all done through evaporative cooling. The system we've got going here is a closed loop, so we'll just continually go around. There is no exchange of pollutant from the outside environment at all. It is just a closed cell. So this is probably not an air conditioning person. There's probably a name for that, but I'd say it's probably called something like a closed cell air conditioning loop. Now that will get us 80 degrees of temperature difference. Now you can then hook these up in series. So if I build another one of these, a heat exchanger, and another one, we can then sort of get another 80 degrees out of it. Well, thereabouts. I have built a second cell, sort of same as this one here. Once again, that one's 130 degrees. That was a bit warmer, this one. Okay, fair enough. 17 litres in there, 15 litres in there, so it's about the same. It's actually just a bit warmer at 64 versus 50. But once again, we now have a hot side at 144 degrees versus one at 50 degrees. So now, to make a multi-cell air conditioner, I can just put a heat exchanger across the two of them. Nope, come on, there we go. Oop. So if I now put that there, the heat can be lost out of this side into here, which will allow this side to become cooler. And of course this side will become hotter. So we should have temperature here going up, temperature on this side going up as well, and I didn't hook up any temperature gauges on this side. But this one should be going down, and this one should be going down. And as once again we have our evaporation set to as much as it can, or as low as it can, that will keep cooling until it reaches, well, essentially another 80 degrees from here, provided this one doesn't reach 250 degrees first, at which point it will no longer condense. There we go. Okay, so we've put a couple of displays on there. So we now find it going from our hot side down to our cold side by placing a single cell. Well, they're actually two separate cells that we've got here, but they are essentially the same cell, just connected with a heat exchanger in the middle. And now our temperature difference from our input is 146.4 and rising, and our cold side is 135.6 and falling. And that will continue until it reaches its new state of equilibrium. Now our temperature range has gone from 80 degrees maximum by adding two cells to, what are we up to? 110, 112, and still rising. Now that is a way you can do it. Of course, you can add on more and more until you get right down to the freezing point of the pollutant, and then your pipes will burst, but that's okay. That happens. Right, so, and now, of course, we've got a higher temperature out here and a lower temperature down here. We could almost get that to a nice room temperature for Vulcan and still have enough heat outside to passively heat exchange with the nighttime air. So that is your second variant of it. Well, it's still closed cells, essentially still the same variant. We've just joined them together in series. So that's probably a multi-closed cell air conditioner. But now things like this do get fairly heavy with what you're doing. So there are other ways of doing it. So once you got the cold here, it's just a matter of what you do with it. Now, a major drawback you have to be aware of on this one here is a limitation by how quickly these purge valves can work. So if I suddenly want to use this as a cold heat sink, so if I want to store, like manufacturing a heap of cold liquid or cold gas or whatever to store as a sort of a thermal battery, I can store it in there. But if I now connect a heat exchanger to that to cool down the contents of a furnace, the sudden shock loading of the heat into here could vaporize all of that gas faster than the purge valve can actually remove it, in which case you may be in danger of exploding your pipes. So for that, we have a different another option that we have available, which is our these ones here, a phase change device. Now these things here require a bit to build. Well, I'll build one of them. All right, give us a sec. We are set up. So we have, once again, our closed system there. It's our reservoir tank is switched off. We just still have our closed system here as we had before. We have our liquid in here. We have our gas in here, in there. We'll try. So once again, that is gas, just happy as a gas. Now our purge valve we have switched off. So instead of using the purge valve, we should just put you away. We're gone. So we are without the purge valve now. We are relying on the liquid drain and our evaporation chamber. And once again, we just have the liquid input and the gas output. Now on this side, we have the heat exchange connection. Now don't try and connect the heat exchanger to that. That's what I did for a few times there when I couldn't figure it out. This is the heat exchanger. So that is where you hook your gas you want to cool or whatever. So I have some CO2 here at 727 degrees. If I suddenly connected that via a heat exchanger to this thing here with the purge valve in there, I probably would have flash evaporated all of the pollutant and exploded the pipe there. Now this is a way of doing it in a controlled manner. So I can now overwhelm this. The pressure in here will increase beyond what can be handled by these pipes here, and have liquid in it without bursting it. So we have a material that can take liquid and can take high pressure. Gee, why don't we buy our pipes from that factory? Yeah. But anyway, let's just go with it, nod and smile and say, yeah, that makes sense. Right, so our liquid comes in the bottom via the liquid connection. It goes into here. It does require power, and we have a pressure setting on there. Of course, the pressure setting will allow us to select, effectively select what temperature we want to cool this down to. So if we go back to our graph, if we want to cool it down to, say, room temperature, say 20 degrees, we want 3560 kilopascals. So if we set that to, do it the easy way, 3560. Right, and if we switch it on, that away, we find that our temperature in here should immediately go down to about 20 degrees or less. It's getting there. It can't quite build up enough pressure in there, but once the pressure in there builds up, because it's just been allowed to evaporate as much as it wants to try and fill it, but it can't. So anyway, right, so now if we connect up our pipe here, yoink. Now I should find that we've probably overwhelmed the pressure in there, so it's gone up to 5 megapascals. Oof. and 179 degrees, we should find that our pressure in here, our liquid is completely gone. Awesome. And that is probably too hot. We need some more pollutant. Awesome demonstration. Now let's chuck a bit more in there. And see how we go. You might find that it all gets too hot now. $110 for liquid. Yeah, it's not getting to the explodey point. It's all right. 118 degrees, 119, so 150 is the maximum we can get it there. If that goes up above 150 degrees, we're just going to flash the whole lot and it'll not be good. At which point we can put our overload back on there. And set you back to about 5 megapascals. Don't explode. Right, so that's dumping it all in there. That is condensing. It's up to 142 degrees. That, of course, that is pushing through here. It's making noise because it is reaching the maximum temperature at which we can actually get condensation. So at 137 degrees, our pressure in here is getting up to 5 megapascals. So it is trying. In here we're down to 60, 61. We've got pressure in there. It is now too hot. Okay, so I've overwhelmed the system by putting too much in here. But if I then go put some radiators on there to try and get rid of that heat, if I have some radiators, I don't have any radiators. So it is slowly cooling down. Chucking 700 degrees into such a small system there was probably a bit much for it. But so we have kind of overwhelmed it there. We've reached there, but yeah, it's cooled it down. So that is a way of sort of dumping a huge amount of heat into it without trying to explode everything there. Once again, as I say, we've overwhelmed it there, but yeah, you know, we're learning things as we go. Right, now because we have a pollutant there, I have noticed that that's a pollutant pipe. So I can paint that yellow, paint you yellow, and paint you yellow. But, uh-oh. Yeah, I know, I was just telling them that. No, that's not right. But to be fair, I mean, all the liquid connectors are blue, but that one just kind of stands out because it's, yeah. You can't unsee that now, fellow OCD fans. Right, but that's that thing. Now, so what can you do with it? Now, probably, as I say, the best probably possible application for this one is probably on Vulkan. So let's pop over to Vulkan and build something a little bit bigger than this, which has a little bit more use. Here we are on Vulkan. It is night time. We find that outside we have our wonderful 125.5 degrees or thereabouts. There's some stuff going on outside. And we have our pipe here. It is, well, 130 probably because the outlet's sitting right next to the radiator. But if I switch on the vent, which I have on a remote control there, the 127.7 degrees in the pipe. Now, outside on Vulkan, we have a lot of pollutant in the atmosphere. So we are just going to immediately harvest some pollutant from the atmosphere. So if I switch that off, I grab myself a valve. That's not a valve. Bound to have one somewhere. Oh, shit. Here comes the sun. Okay, if we can get there before the day comes up, let's quickly grab... we'll chuck you out of the way. If I put in a one-way valve there, it will choke up the pipe a little bit. Not enough. So if we look at you now, we have 3 megapascals in there. Let's try choking. Now 3 megapascals is not enough to choke up the pipe at this temperature. So let's try again. We shall chuck in another valve there and try again. Yoink. There we go. Now we're getting some liquefaction in there. It is 127 degrees outside. It is now getting up to 131 degrees in the pipe. That's starting to heat up outside. Anyway, we're actually at 11 megapascals in there now, so that will be suitable for condensing pollutant. We have the liquid pollutant forming in the pipe. As I say, the temperature's gone up to 135 degrees, and let's wait till tomorrow night before we can do it. That was great planning. Yes, well done. Try again. There we go. Nighttime. That came around nice and quick. Now, once again, if I switch on our vent, we find we start to condense some liquid in there. It's 10.9 megapascals in there. That is well above the liquefaction temperature for the pollutant. Right, so now the pollutant is once again liquefying in there. It is transferring the latent heat to the gas, and the gas is being ejected further out. So we see 129 degrees in there, 130 in there. So we're getting more liquefaction in the next section of pipe as well, which is causing a further heat increase. Now we want to get rid of the heat, so let's just take the liquid from the first stage there. So I shall need a drain valve, which will be you. I shall need a pipe in there, which will be you. And I shall need some liquid pipes as well, which you'll do. Right. So now we have, our liquid coming in at 129 degrees there. If we allow it to come into here, it will immediately evaporate. And wow, we are dropping down to, okay, dropping down. Once again, it will continue to evaporate until it reaches the equilibrium pressure there, which it is not even close to at the moment. But it'll get in there. It's coming in very slowly. Now it is coming in very slowly because I only have a very small amount of gas in here. Now I can increase that. We should get a bigger build-up of gas and more liquefaction. So put ye onto there and grab something like ye. Do I have any more of them? I wouldn't. That's just great planning yet again. But anyway, that'll do us. Now we find our pressure goes down while it fills that up and rises again. Right, so we're now liquefying. We're now getting a lot more liquid out of there, which we can drain into here, and it is filling up now a lot quicker. Now there is, as I say, there's a bit of pipe shenanigans going on there. So by changing the number of links in this pipe or the number of one-way valves you've got, you can increase or decrease this pressure here. So we're not getting back to our 11 megapascals we had before. It looks like it's only going up to the 8.5. But yeah, that's something. All right, so we've got a litre of liquid in there. It has reached its equilibrium point. So as we pump more liquid in there, we see the pressure has risen enough that the gas that's in here is now liquefying, and the other stuff is evaporating. We've got 60 litres of capacity in there. But, I mean, if we just say that's enough, we're good enough. Yeah, should be okay too. I can just switch that off now, can't I? Yeah, we're good. Now, so this has now gone down to 97 degrees. So we've gone from our outside temperature 125 up to 130 in our condensation. So our liquid has come in at 130 degrees. We have allowed it to evaporate back to 97 degrees. Now, once again, we can put our regulator on there. I don't have a regulator. All this crap on the floor there, and I don't have what I need. I need a bigger floor. We managed to fit the purge valve back on there again. So once again, we are sitting at 83 degrees. Now I can switch that on to, let's say 4,000. What do we got in there? Yeah, 4.6. We'll say 4,000. 4 megapascals, which will then allow this now to cool back down again. So there we go. And we'll notice that the temperature that's in this pipe here is now also going down. So the gas we're bringing in from outside is 128 degrees or 125 degrees. The temperature in here is down to 58. So remember that the temperature is shared between the gas and the liquid. So any gas that we're blowing out is now colder than what we're sucking in. So I could just blow that straight back outside to the atmosphere and let it go. But as it is actually pollutant that we want to keep, and it is colder than the pollutant we're getting from outside, I can just pop it back into the inlet side of this and it will cool down that gas further, so as what's actually coming in will be cooler again. So yeah, so it's sort of running it back around again. So we are now dropping in temperature. So we've got down to about 50 degrees. I still have a tiny bit of liquid left, but we still have some liquid left. Right, now everything over pressure is now being dumped back outside. So if I switch my vent on again, it will start bringing in more gas. And once it gets up to pressure, it should start liquefying again. Here we go. Once again, it'll start coming into this side, which will warm this side up. But this side is trying to, the purge valve is now trying to cool it down. Our liquid is struggling. We're using more liquid there because once again, as we found out with our experiment on the other side, 133 degrees, 80 degrees is the most temperature difference you can get. And we're trying to do more than that. And if we try and do more than that, we'll find that all of our liquid will just disappear. So setting that for 4,000 is not a good idea. So we set that to a higher value, so we have less than 80 degrees coming in here. So now that is going, still running out. We did set that to 4,700. Oh, I've got it switched off, you idiot. Right, now we've got liquid coming in. Its temperature is going up. Our liquid's coming in. Right, as we can see, it is now, well, temperature's going up, but we have reached 4.7, 80 degrees. Let's go for a little bit. 4,500. It can't quite do that, but anyway. So that's what's coming in. We are gaining liquid. Now everything's just coming in, open to the atmosphere, building up a bit of pressure, liquefying. So the volatiles won't liquefy, the CO2 won't liquefy, the pollutant is the only one. So we're essentially purifying the pollutants, squeezing it straight out of the atmosphere to form a liquid which is colder than what's in the atmosphere. Now once again, we're starting to build up some liquids. Don't want to explode the whole lot. So once the incoming gas stops coming in, we now find that it cools back down again. Now that'll cool down to whatever is the equilibrium pressure that we have set on here. So we now have a cooled gas. Right, so we now have a cooled liquid there that we can now put into a heat exchanger. Or we can put on another cell on this one, or we can put it into a heat exchanger. Now this one is, as I say, it is just open to the atmosphere. So as it operates, it gains liquid. As it does cooling, it will push the gas straight back out to the outside. Now it's not a problem because we've got essentially an unlimited supply of it outside, and it is quite happily at a liquefaction temperature. Now that we've got the gas, we probably need to do something with it. Now here on Vulcan, what we need here is a supply of oxygen, water and food. Basically, that's what we need to survive. Now the oxygen we don't have, but we can make that from the plants. The food we don't have, but once again, that comes from the plants. The plants need water, which we also don't have, but the water comes from a hydrogen combustor, one of these things, which we can make from oxygen and just the outside atmosphere, because there's volatiles out there. So we're back to needing oxygen, which comes from the plants. The plants need the water, which we make from the oxygen, which comes from the plants. The only thing we really need is the carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide, coincidentally, is one of the things we've got outside, but it is hot. So if I use this to cool down some carbon dioxide from outside, I've essentially got everything I need for survival. I'll have a sense of cooling and a source of CO2 for my plants. So I will need a heat exchanger and a filtration to bring in my CO2. Rock and roll. Let's give it a shot. I have put in, so the brown pipe is essentially our outside gas that is coming directly from the vent. I have connected up a carbon dioxide filter, which will filter out into the grey pipe here, which is currently empty. Now that is coming directly from the pressurised line here, so it'll just allow us to process our CO2 a bit quicker. Now that is connected up to the heat exchanger side of the evaporator. The evaporator is connected up to our supply of liquid pollutant. So all I should have to do now is switch ye back on again, switches on the vent. That is causing the liquefaction of the pollutant once it gets up to pressure. There we go. Now we see the temperature in here rising as the liquid transfers its heat to the gas, and the excess heat is blown just straight outside with there's a bit of liquid coming out as well, but who cares? We're getting most of it there. Right, and the liquid is coming into here where it is allowed to evaporate. It's coming in reasonably quick, so let's make sure I don't mess that up and explode the pipe. So we grab our CO2. That can come in. Now if we want to cool it, we can switch on this thing and set it to, what do we set it at, 3600? There we go. We can switch that on. All right, so that now heats up. This should be cooling down. That should be all evaporating just about as quick as it can. That's okay, because we're getting what we want out of it. See, that's now down to 53 degrees as it comes in. Now that is something we could pump into a greenhouse. Well, we'd only be pumping into the greenhouse slowly, so once we've got our greenhouse cooled down, we could pump in that. That is not going to overwhelm the temperature of the greenhouse. We still have a little bit of gas coming in. So our liquid is there. We're only getting about 1 tick worth of liquid in there because it is all being used up in this thing here. Now that is set at 3.6. It is running at 3.6. That's good. Now I've got 3 megapascals of that. I could probably switch that off now, which will reduce the thermal load on this thing. And now the 55, so we should probably start gathering a bit of liquid in here now that that's cooling down eventually. And all of this will cool down as well. It's 127 degrees. Okay, all the liquid is being used up to cool this down, but it will eventually get there. So this one, as we say, we set that one to 3.6, which was going to get us to there, 22 degrees. So once that one manages to cool that down, it should settle at about 22 degrees. It's just struggling now because it's used up all my liquid. I need a bigger vent and I'll be able to generate a little bit more liquid a little bit faster. Now this one here is also very handy because the CO2 coming out of here is at a temperature that is very good for things like, say, cooling down your room. If you want to hook up an air conditioner, you can dump all your heat into here. This would keep cooling it down. That would be cooled down enough to go into your room. It took me a while to figure this out, that you know, your temperature of coolant, which is CO2, can also be used as a CO2 pipe. Yeah, it took me a while to figure that out. I've been running a second pipe full of CO2 for a very long time and not really figured that one out. But yeah, I figured that one out now. Right, so the way it's working here is the gas coming in from outside is compressed into here, where it liquefies. Whoops, switch it on. Where it liquefies, it transfers the excess heat, the heat of latent heat, to the gas. The gas gets blown outside with the excess heat. So the lower state liquid, lower energy state liquid comes into here, where it evaporates to drop to a lower energy state, and we're using that cooler liquid in here to then evaporate to an even lower energy state, which we're using to cool down the carbon dioxide, which we're going to blow into our base, and we can also use that for cooling our base. Okay, so here we are outside. We have essentially the same setup here. I have a large vent because, well, it vents more in. I have plenty of volume in here where it is collecting the all the pollutant, liquefying that. As I say, it's getting up to 13 megapascals there. When it's switched on, it is collecting the liquid pollutant in here. We have that at 81 degrees. Right, we have the pressure relief valve there to let it out, as though it's being dumped directly outside. That one is. Right, so I have the coolant coming in there, and it is then running into the secondary cooler, which is the evaporation device, and it is cooling my CO2 down to 34.4 degrees Celsius. Now once that is being vented directly inside into my greenhouse for my plants to eat, they transfer it into oxygen. And the oxygen is very handy for me to breathe, and also using it to create water. So the oxygen filter is the one over the back there, and that just, as excess of oxygen builds up here, it just filters it out into my tank, and then it comes out here where it mixes with the atmosphere gases to form our water. The water's coming in there. It's just going through a couple of heat exchangers. Primary one there, where it's dropping down to 300 or 400 degrees, and into it then has a one-way valve into a secondary. It's dropping down to 220 degrees, and then has a liquid drain valve there on both of them. If you do get any, there is a little bit of liquid water coming out of there. Most of the liquid water is coming out of there. And once you get a one-way valve, hook it into a tertiary cooler. Now that one is connected via a heat exchanger directly to our liquid pollutant, which we have plenty of. And so by that stage, we should have caught all of the water. So we have, was there water? So 15% water there. It is only 3% water there. And it's only sort of less than 1% water in there. So there is a little bit of loss comes out of here. This just releases the overpressure once it's got there. And that's about it. Then the water comes in. Once again, it then goes through a heat exchanger to burn off any extra heat to equalise with the carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide is just being sucked in directly from outside via the CO2 filter just here. And of course we also have our air conditioner, which is just using the CO2 here as a heat sink. So that is our system there. I mean, it's a fairly integrated system, but that does the trick. So that is just operating off a few ferns and a couple of potatoes. That is producing all the oxygen I need to create the water and create the cool down the carbon dioxide and everything I need. So that's cooling, water, oxygen, everything's there in that absolute mess of valves and everything there. Right, now the thing you have to be careful of, I've not figured out the best way to do my water there, but so we're getting it down to 300 degrees there, so we don't have an issue with the pollutant liquefying there, but as it gets down to 200 degrees there, what's this one here? 150 degrees, the pollutant will start to liquefy as well. So I don't want that to liquefy and come through my liquid drain into my water. So, but we do find that once again, if we check our good old pollutant graph here, it will not liquefy below 1.8 megapascals. Whereas the water will liquefy right down to 7 kilopascals. So if I want to make sure I separate out the water from the pollutant, even though both of them could liquefy, as long as I keep the pressure here below 1.8 megapascals, the pollutant should never liquefy and get into my water supply. So there you go. Once again, those graphs are a very important part of what you'll be doing there. So learn how to use them and know what you're doing. But yes, it is very complex. This is about the simplest, I say that, it's about the simplest setup I can get for Vulkan. There may be easier ways to do it, but that is just a single stage open cycle air conditioner with the heat exchange, with the evaporation device as well. Well, I guess you can say it's a two-stage then, isn't it? Yeah. But the CO2 is pulled in and cooled, and that is fed straight to the greenhouse where it's processed to oxygen. The oxygen is then brought back out and processed into water, which once again goes through the cooling system, which is coming straight from our evaporator. So this does essentially all of the cooling down to 34.8 degrees, and that one looks after the cooling in the room.
Power low.
But there you go. Morning, that's all right, don't worry about the power. But that's about the most basic system I can come up with for cooling. And that is, as I say, that has made Vulkan a lot easier. Because some of the elaborate things used to have to do with the atmospherics devices, not anymore. A couple of bits there and away you go. Now the sun's coming up, I'd better get back inside. Okay, so as I said, that's probably about the simplest system I've been able to come up with for Vulkan. Now that one is sort of enough to keep my little safe room going. So it's enough to get my plants, keep that room going, keep it cool, keep my oxygen coming in. But you are, of course, limited by imagination after you get from there, because you can build much more elaborate systems should you desire. Now, what I've got here is, I guess, what you'd probably call it is an open system. It is is an open cycle system there, but it then does cascade through a heap of different cells all the way through the end, eventually getting down to 20 degrees. And I have a huge amount of liquid stored in there. So, and I've got a graph, which is very important. It becomes very complex from there. So what I've got, once again, this just pulls in from the large vent during the day, brings in your liquid, which we then sort of bring through a cell. We try then to evaporate it. Evaporates a little bit there, and that one just gets blown straight back outside. So that is the open cycle. Once it moves past there, it comes into sort of another cell, which is through there. Well, it's actually this section here. So this one will evaporate some of the liquid there. Now onto this side, and it then passes through a heat exchanger to try and cool the incoming liquid as well. And this one, once again, pulls into a next cell there where it cools it down even further, tries to evaporate a little bit, and once again passes the gas coming out of this one, because the gas coming out of this one is very cool. It can go through a heat exchanger to try and cool the incoming liquid. So then I should be able to cool it down even further as the liquid gets cooler as it comes in. This gets repeated 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. And then it gets just stored as a liquid reserve there. So during the day, when the sun's up, this will go down. No, very slowly, but it will go down. And once again, I have the evaporation device there cooling my CO2, which is just coming in from outside. Now, that CO2 line goes through the base, once again to operate as a heat dump for the air conditioners and as a source of CO2 for my plants. Now, this one is probably fairly convoluted, because as we go down this side with the liquid, we are constantly cooling it, and it gets cooler and cooler till it gets to the tank. And once it gets to the tank, it is then used, because of course if we're using a gas that's as cool as possible, it's going to have the most cooling effect once it gets fed into devices like this. But as it evaporates, it goes back through the system there. Once again through heat exchangers to cool what's coming in, because the gas coming out of there is 29 degrees and the liquid coming in is 36, so I may as well gain a little bit of cooling effect from that one there. So something to look out for here is if you're trying to cool it, we have 353 mole of gas in there, and we have over 1,000 mole of liquid in here. So the cooling effect of that is not going to be great. I probably should pop some more, another couple of these tanks on there, so as I have a greater cooling power on that side of it. And once again, that steps through as the evaporative from this side comes out. Once again at 35 degrees, it mixes with whatever came out of there at 28 degrees, and then goes to cool the incoming liquid there at 45. So it gets very complicated and convoluted in what you're doing, but I don't know if this is the best one. I just know that it's something that works. There's something you've got to be careful of, though, if you are using this method with the heat exchangers to try and cool your incoming liquid there, is make sure you don't have any condensation in the gaseous side of that one. If you get it condensing on this side, it'll start to heat up again, and you might find yourself heating up the incoming liquid instead of cooling it. So I have just let that run with a heap of one-way valves, and I have a volume pump just constantly running at 5 litres just to make sure I don't get any condensation in there, and the condensation should all be happening in these tanks here. So they're heating up, and I've been trying to cool that with another evaporator. I don't know if that actually does anything or whether it's just a complete waste of time, but I'm still learning it. It's very complex, so a lot of experimenting is required. But that is the cooler I've got for my base. There is no filters in that. It does maintain itself. It is all just operated from the vent out the front and a few regulators along the side. So all it does is, I do have some automation for it, and all it does is read how much liquid I've got in here. If it's less than 4,500, switch on the vent at night time, of course, and away you go. So and this is probably not even anywhere near as complex as some of the things some people have built. So yeah, as I say, it gets very complex, but it gives you a lot of room for manoeuvring and inventing and blowing things up, of course, because that's half the point. So which is the best coolant you should be using for all of this stuff? Well, as with, it's Stationeers. What do you expect? The answer is it depends. There is no one straight answer. It depends on your situation that you're in. Now, I am using pollutant here because if you check your graphs, you can see pollutant. Our temperature range we have here is between 153 degrees down to minus 100. Now, that is within the operating range where I want to live. So it's within room temperature range. It's combined in that area, and it's within the environmental constraints of outside. Secondly, the pollutant is very easy to liquefy, because another thing you want to look at on your graph is the pressures. So the higher this one is, so that one goes up to 5.8 kilopascals, and the minimum value is 1.8 kilopascals. So the lower that goes, the slower that it will evaporate. So having this one evaporating at a high pressure, it wants to evaporate. It wants to phase change quite easily. Another thing we want to look at is the latent heat, 2 kilojoules per mole. It's not the highest. We have nitrous, which is 4, and we have water, which is at 8. I could use them because both of them will work at these temperatures as well. The difference between the reason I've chosen pollutant over nitrous and water is that I have pollutant. I don't have the other two. Well, not enough of it to use anyway. But we find that water, if we check that one there, we find that the pressure actually goes down quite low in the temperature range that we want to use. So it will work, but it will be rather slow. Nitrous, there we go. Once again, it will work at the temperatures we want to go to. We are getting very close to the freezing point, so we're playing with a bit of danger there. And once again, the pressures are only 900 kilopascals, so they're not quite as good, although you are working with double the amount of latent heat in it. It's not going as fast, but mostly I don't have nitrous. To make nitrous, I need nitrogen and oxygen, and I don't have either of them on this planet. So pollutant was chosen purely as it works, and it's very convenient. I have lots of it. I can get it straight out of the atmosphere without filtering, without processing. So, yeah, that was just a convenience thing, that one there. But you can use other gases there. Once again, it depends what temperature you're trying to operate at. I mean, if you want to go down to very low temperatures there, you do have nitrogen. Nitrogen with a latent heat of 0.5 is garbage, but it's the only one that will operate down to minus 230 degrees. So it's, it's a case of what you want it to do. But as I say, pollutant's very easy to work with. That's probably the one you're going to use the most because, well, you can get it out of your furnace on the moon. You've really got no other use for it. So, yeah, I say use it while you got it. But that's how I've chosen that one there. So, but this is a lot to get your head around. So it's you can be very complex or you can keep it reasonably simple. It's all up to you. But yeah, that's latent heat. I hope this hasn't all come across as gibberish. I've had a few goes at this trying to record it, and it's not easy to try and get it into a coherent thought pattern. But anyway, I've given it a go. That's latent heating. It is made Vulcan so much easier. So yeah, if you want to have that go, if you've always been wanting to have a go at Vulkan, now's the time to do it. You can do it a lot easier. Capturing your water, I still haven't quite figured out the perfect way of doing that, but I've got a way that does work. And yeah, but anyway, that's about it. So till next time, happy building. See ya.